I was at my parents' place that night. I had to watch over the place while they were out of town for a wedding. It's around midnight, and I'm all settled in with snacks and my blanket. I was watching Jim pranking Dwight because I was bored as hell. Then, I heard a noise coming from the front of the house. Just a little click. I'm thinking it's probably just the house, right? But then I heard it again, but it sounds something like metal this time. My cat sat up, looking down the hallway, like she's actually seen something. I'm still thinking it's just in my head. I mean, we've all been there, right? Every random noise becomes something when you're home alone. So I ignored it. But right then, I hear what sounds exactly like someone messing with the knob on the front door. My whole body stopped moving. Man, I even started thinking of all the worst case scenarios. But I keep telling myself, it's nothing. I don't want to message my parents and freak them out, especially when they're out of town. I don't want to ruin their night. But then, I heard a click sound, like someone's trying to open the door. Now I'm fully freaking out. I took my phone and crept to the back of the house, hoping that if someone is outside, they don't see me moving around. I don't want to call the cops yet and risk looking dumb, so I'm just kind of waiting. Then it got worse. I started hearing footsteps on the front porch, clear, heavy steps. And then, I swear to God, I saw a gloved hand push through the mail slot on the door. I didn't even know we had one of those things. I was staring at this hand, trying to reach in, feeling around like it's looking for something to turn or pull. That's when I finally called 911. I'm whispering into the phone, explaining that there's someone actually trying to get into my house. The dispatcher told me to stay on the line, but honestly, I'm just barely keeping it together at this point. I remember hearing this guy mumble something outside, almost like he's arguing with himself or someone. I can't form words, but it's clear he's frustrated. I just stood there while I waited for the cops. The hand finally pulled back, and I heard him muttering something about the lock being too tough. Then the footsteps moved away from the door. The dispatcher's telling me to stay put, and I can hear the sirens finally getting closer. By the time the cops show up, the guy's gone, obviously. They did a quick sweep, but there's no sign of him anywhere. They checked out the front door and confirmed that he tried to mess with the lock. They said it looked like he used something to try and force it, but our deadbolt is solid, so he didn't get in. After the cops left, I tried to relax, even though I was still on edge. Then, around 1 or 2 a.m., I was trying to get some sleep. Then I heard a noise sound from the back of the house. I tried to ignore it. Maybe it's just a tree branch or something. I heard it again. It's like someone testing the window. I inch toward the back hallway to see if I can see what's going on. The sound gets louder, and I saw the back door handle moving, like someone's trying to turn it from outside. Whoever was out there decided to come back. I dialed 911 again, whispering that someone's now at the back door. Then, just like that, the power goes out. Total darkness. My phone is my only light, and I dim the screen. The dispatcher told me to stay calm, that officers are on their way. But just then, there's a loud bang on the glass, like someone slamming into it. Finally, the police lights flashed through the front windows. I heard footsteps sprinting away around the side of the house, and within minutes, the officers were at the door. They searched the yard, but of course, there's no one there again. Just a smudge on the back door glass, like a handprint. Even after they left, I didn't sleep, wondering if they'll come back. Thankfully, they didn't. I definitely texted my parents in the morning to tell them what happened. It was around 2 p.m., and I was stuck on a work project, sitting at my desk. I was deep into my spreadsheet when I felt something strange, like when you're sure someone's looking over your shoulder. I looked around, didn't see anything, and told myself it was just that midday burnout creeping in. But a few minutes later, I noticed my headphones, which had been sitting there, suddenly shift. I'm talking about a slow slide across the desk, just a few inches, like someone nudged them. I thought maybe I'd bumped the desk without noticing, but everything else was still. My coffee didn't spill, my mouse hadn't moved. It didn't make sense, but maybe I was just zoning out too hard and refocused. Not even 5 minutes go by, and I swear, I heard my name whispered. It was not loud, just soft, like someone standing right beside me, saying it in the quietest way possible. I yanked my headphones out and looked around the room. There was nothing. I even checked my phone, thinking maybe I'd accidentally hit something, but there wasn't any sound playing. Just my empty room, silent. I tried to go back to work, but I have this nagging feeling, like someone's in the room with me. And then I noticed the door to my bedroom. I'm sure I'd closed it before I started work, but now it's open, just slightly, enough to see the doorway. I got up, went to check, but of course, nothing. I went back to my desk, and I'm starting to get creeped out. As I sit down, I catch this faint whiff of lavender. It's subtle, but strong enough that it cuts through the usual smell of my coffee and the dusty kind of scent in my room. Here's the thing, I don't own anything lavender scented. It's not like I have candles or air fresheners around. The smell itself reminds me of my aunt. She used to wear this lavender perfume all the time, but she hadn't been around in months. The scent fades after a few seconds, leaving me with this strange sense of emptiness. I went back to working and I heard a soft creak behind me. It's not loud, just this barely there sound like weight shifting on the floor. I turned around fast, but there's no one there, just the slight sway of my door, like someone had been leaning on it and let go. Now I'm sitting there, weirded out, but trying to ignore it. I told myself maybe from too much caffeine. I sat back down, determined to finish this project. But I keep glancing at my open door, and then, this is where it gets weird. I got a message notification from my aunt. It's nothing unusual, just a quick, "Hey, how are you?" message. But the timing of it gives me chills. I'm sitting here, dealing with all this random stuff that reminds me of her, and she just happens to message me out of nowhere? Trying not to overthink it, I respond to her message, and when I look up, I saw it again, the faintest shift of my headphones. This time, I know I didn't bump anything, I'm not even near them. They moved again just a tiny bit, and right as they stop. After that, everything goes quiet again, but now I'm wide awake. I'm trying to keep working, but the silence feels different, heavier somehow. I gave up on the spreadsheet and decided to walk around, stretch my legs, just trying to break the tension. But when I step out into the hall, it feels colder. Like, noticeably colder, almost enough to see my breath. I looked around, but all the windows are closed and there's no draft. Just the same faint smell of lavender hanging in the air. I finally decided I'm done and went back to grab my things. But when I step back into my room, my headphones are lying on the floor, in the middle of the room, as if someone had picked them up and tossed them there. That's it, I'm out. I took my stuff, locked the door, and left, barely even looking back. Every now and then, if I get a random whiff of lavender, I'm reminded of that day. My parents went out of town for the weekend, so I had the place to myself. I was actually kind of looking forward to a chill night with the movie. It's around 8 p.m., and I decided to watch Wreck, if you know that movie. It's like a found footage movie where they got stuck inside an apartment building, I think. Anyway, I closed the blinds, turned off most of the lights, and settled on the couch. The living room faces the backyard, which is usually pitch black at night. But we've got a small motion sensor light on the back deck, so it turns on if something moves back there, like if a small critter passes by. I'm about halfway into the movie when, out of nowhere, that light clicks on. At first, I didn't think much of it. Probably an animal. But I looked up, a little curious, and noticed that the light isn't flickering off, which it usually does after a minute if it's an animal. Instead, it's just on. I felt a little uneasy, but I tried to forget about it. After all, I'm watching a horror movie. It's probably just a coincidence. I tried to go back to my movie, but my eyes kept drifting to the window, watching that light stay on. A full minute passes, then two, and it's still shining. I started to think maybe something bigger set it off and got stuck, so I got up and headed to the kitchen where there's a better view of the deck. I peek out through the window, looking for an animal or maybe a big branch that could have fallen on the deck. But the light is shining over an empty deck, nothing there. I squinted, trying to see further out into the backyard, but there was nothing. I decided it's probably a bug that got too close to the sensor, or the light's just malfunctioning. So I went back to the living room. The movie's still playing, but I'm only half watching it now. After a few minutes, the light finally flickers off, and I started to relax, until it snaps right back on. I have this gut feeling that whatever triggered the light is still out there. I waited for it to go off again, but it doesn't. Then I heard a soft sound, a kind of tap, 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 coming from the window. It's not loud, but in the quiet of the house, it feels deafening. I can barely breathe as I look over at the window, just in time to see a shadow move across the blinds. It's a quick motion, but enough for me to realize that someone is actually out there. Now I'm panicking. I consider calling someone, but I don't want to make a big deal if it's nothing. So I slowly went to the front door to see if I can lock it just in case. I'm holding my breath, listening so hard it feels like my ears are ringing. And then I heard a creak coming from the backyard gate. It's that distinct, rusty sound that only our gate makes when it swings open. Now, I know someone's out there. I crouched behind the couch and peeked out again through the living room window. I can barely see anything, just the outline of the deck and the light shining over it. But then, I noticed something strange. A set of footprints in the grass, leading right up to the window. They're fresh and facing inward, like someone was standing right there, looking inside. I can't take it anymore. I took my phone and finally called the police. While I'm waiting, I heard the back gate creak again, and then footsteps, moving across the deck. Then silence. The cops arrived about 10 minutes later, but by then there's no sign of anyone. They found the footprints outside the window, leading back toward the gate, but nothing else. They told me it was probably just a trespasser or someone checking out houses, but that doesn't help me feel any safer. Now I can't help but wonder if this person was watching me the whole time, waiting for me to look away from the movie just long enough to stand right outside that window. I'm still double-checking every door and window every night. I'd just come back from a run. My roommate was out of town, so I had the whole apartment to myself. Perfect time to catch up on some shows and relax. I made a quick dinner, turned on Breaking Bad, and settled in. I grabbed my water bottle off the table, took a sip, and set it back down. But a few minutes later, I noticed my shirt felt damp. Not like a drip or a splash, more like I'd leaned against something wet. Confused, I checked around me. The couch was dry, the bottle wasn't leaking. It was just this strange, random dampness on the side of my shirt that I couldn't explain. I told myself I must have somehow spilled water without noticing. I shrugged it off and went back to watching. Maybe 20 minutes later, I heard a metallic sound coming from the kitchen, just a quick clink. My first thought was that maybe I'd left a spoon near the edge of the counter and it slipped. But when I checked, everything was exactly where I'd left it. Nothing had moved. The kitchen was silent. The sound didn't come back, so I brushed it off, figuring it was just the pipes or something. Back to the couch, trying to unwind again. I'd just gotten comfortable when, out of nowhere, I got this sharp, prickling feeling on my foot. I kicked my leg instinctively, thinking maybe a bug had crawled on me. But there was nothing there. Not a spider, not even a stray hair. Just an empty spot where I'd felt something touch me. It was enough to make me uneasy, but I told myself it was probably static or my mind playing tricks. I tried to get comfortable, but I kept glancing around the room. The strange prickling sensation on my foot lingered a little too long, almost like the memory of a touch. My legs were tucked up close to me now, my eyes fixed on the screen as I tried to shake the feeling off. And then, as if right on cue, I noticed something out of the corner of my eye. My keys, which I'd left by the door, were lying on the floor just a few feet away from where I'd dropped them. I was sure I'd left them on the entryway table, but here they were, perfectly in line with the carpet. Maybe I'd missed the table or knocked them off somehow, but the placement felt a little too neat. I grabbed my water bottle, figuring maybe I just needed to clear my head, but as I lifted it, I realized it felt way lighter than it should have. I unscrewed the lid and peered inside. It was practically empty, even though I hadn't taken more than a couple of sips since filling it. It was like the water had just disappeared. I could still see the condensation on the inside of the bottle, the way it looks right after you've poured it. My nerves were fraying. I decided to call it a night. I went to my room and climbed into bed, wanting nothing more than to forget whatever was going on. But as I settled in, I felt something odd underneath me, a slight, almost imperceptible shift, like my mattress had shifted just a little. I lay completely still, expecting some noise, some creak, anything to explain the strange feeling. But nothing. I closed my eyes, trying to ignore the creepy silence, telling myself I was overreacting. But you know how it is. Once something weird gets in your head, it's hard to shake. Then I felt it again. That slight shift in the mattress, like something was moving right under me, like a slow push from underneath. I didn't move a muscle, every instinct telling me to get out of bed. But I didn't move, didn't even breathe, just waited to see if it would happen again. And it did. A steady movement, like something, or someone was under my mattress, trying not to be noticed. I grabbed my phone off the nightstand. I didn't even know who I was planning to call. 911? A friend? My roommate, who was miles away. The screen lit up, and for a split second, just enough for me to see the closet door. It was open. Not by a lot, just an inch or two, but I swear I'd closed it earlier. I felt a surge of adrenaline, and I rushed up, tripping over myself as I stumbled toward the door. But the second I moved, the mattress stopped shifting. That was the moment I heard a barely there sound, like a sigh coming from right under the bed. My mind was full on panic mode, trying to make sense of what I was hearing. After that, I rushed to grab my backpack and left, leaving half my stuff behind. I didn't care. I just needed to GTFO. I spent the night at a friend's place, and the next morning I made an excuse to my landlord about needing to fix a broken bed frame, so they'd go in and check it out. When they called me later, they told me that there was nothing wrong with the bed frame, but they found an empty water bottle under the bed, not mine.